Goku can go Super Saiyan. Daniel Park can enter Ultra Instinct. Baki's imagination is so strong, he can conjure an opponent right in front of him. You can't do any of that. But your brain, your nervous system, and your muscles are running the exact same software they are, just untrained. Today, I'm going to show you the real clinical version of every one of those power-ups. No fiction, no hype, just the biology. Every anime fighter is sold to you as a power fantasy. But strip away the aura and the screen shake, and every single transformation is describing a real, measurable system in the human body. A structural system. Your bones, levers, and muscle fibers. A cognitive system. How your brain reads and predicts an opponent. A neurological system. How your nervous system turns thought into reflex. A metabolic system. The fuel that lets the other three systems function without collapsing. This video is a blueprint for all four. By the end, you'll know exactly where you're weak and exactly what to train first. Before you throw a single punch, you have to understand your chassis. Because a fighting style isn't a preference. It's a discovery based on your levers. If you've got long limbs, you have a reach advantage, but more torque stress at the joint. Your job is range control, jabs, teeps, pushing distance away before it becomes a firefight. If you've got a shorter, denser frame, you carry natural structural stability. Your job is closing that distance and making the fight ugly at close range, where your leverage actually wins. Neither is better. They're different tools. But here's the part almost nobody trains. Power doesn't come from your arm. It comes from the kinetic chain. Force generated in the foot, transferred through hip rotation, stabilized by the core, and released through the fist. If any one link in that chain is weak, especially the core, the whole chain leaks energy before it reaches the target. The reality drill. You don't need a gym for this. Push-ups build the pressing chain. Squats and jump squats build explosive ground force. Planks and rotational core work are what keep that force from leaking on its way to your fist. This is the floor, not optional extras. The psychological metric. You'll know your chassis is improving when a strike stops feeling like it comes from your shoulder and starts feeling like it comes from the ground up through your hip. This is the Lookism logic. High-level fighters aren't reacting, they're predicting. Your brain is a prediction machine. It's constantly building a model of what happens next and updating that model off tiny cues. A shift in someone's lead foot, a change in breathing rhythm, eyes flicking toward a target before the hands ever move. A trained fighter isn't faster than you. They're reading the tell half a second earlier, which just looks like speed from the outside. There are two dominant tactical identities, and most people default to one without realizing it. The analytical fighter, naturally observant, wins through counter-striking, baiting, feinting, letting the opponent commit first, then exploiting the opening. The aggressive fighter, naturally relentless, wins through pressure, collapsing space, removing the opponent's time to think, forcing mistakes. Neither is the correct one. What matters is that most people quit training because they never define their combat identity, the why underneath the how. Are you training to survive a real situation, to compete, or to master your own nervous system? That answer decides which drills actually matter to you. The reality drill. Watch a sparring clip with the sound off. Try to call the next strike 1 full second before it happens, using nothing but foot position and shoulder lean. This is literally how prediction gets trained. This is the closest thing to real Ultra Instinct we actually have access to. And it's also the exact mechanism behind Baki's power. He isn't reading anything external. He's visualizing an opponent with such neurological intensity that it manifests almost as a hallucination. That's not fantasy. That's a description of what happens when visualization training is pushed to its absolute limit. Shadow boxing isn't dancing, it's neural mapping. Every time you throw a strike into empty air with intent, you're reinforcing a real neural pathway, the same circuitry you'd use against an actual opponent. But there's a catch. If you shadow box sloppily, unfocused, going through the motions, you're encoding sloppiness into your nervous system just as efficiently as you'd encode precision. The brain doesn't grade effort. It grades repetition. The deep version of this drill. eyes open, breath sync to the strike, and a visualized opponent with specific, realistic habits, not a vague blob. That specificity is what turns visualization from imagination into rehearsal. Here's the direct link to Baki. He does this in his head, with an intensity most people never train toward. You're doing the exact same thing, just in the air, in front of a mirror, instead of purely internally. Different intensity, same neural connection. This is also where ultra instinct actually lives biologically. At the highest level of training, a technique moves from the conscious, effortful prefrontal cortex into the subconscious motor circuitry of the cerebellum. That's not mysticism. That's what 10,000 correct repetitions does to a nervous system. Daniel Park's no-mind state is real. It's called automaticity, and it's earned, not activated. The other half of this system is recovery. Fighting doesn't just tax muscle, it taxes the central nervous system directly. A fighter who can't regulate their own heart rate will redline and gas out no matter how strong they are. This is why elite fighters train breathing and stillness as seriously as they train strikes. A calm nervous system sees openings a panicked one physically cannot process. The reality drill. 10 minutes of blind boxing. Shadow boxing with your eyes closed, visualizing a specific opponent's habits and countering them in real time. Follow it immediately with 2 minutes of slow 4-7-8 breathing to teach your CNS what off feels like after on. None of the above systems function on an empty or broken engine. Forget supplement hype. Nutrition, here, is just chemistry. Protein for tissue repair, carbohydrates for glycogen, your muscle's actual fuel tank, and hydration for basic brain function. Cut carbs too aggressively, and you don't get lean and mean. You get brain fog and a nervous system with nothing to run on. If you can't afford a gym membership, you can definitely afford a packet of milk and a consistent sleep schedule. That's the actual floor. Everything past that is optimization, not requirement. And this is where the Zenkai Boost stops being a cartoon gimmick and becomes real physiology. In Dragon Ball, a fighter gets stronger after nearly dying. In a real body, this is supercompensation. You train to genuine fatigue, and in the recovery window that follows, your body rebuilds slightly stronger than before, if and only if it gets the sleep and fuel to do so. Skip the recovery, and you're not becoming Goku after a near-death fight. You're just accumulating damage with no adaptation attached. The reality drill. Track 2 numbers this week: protein intake and sleep hours. Not calories, not supplements. Those 2 numbers predict whether your training actually converts into strength or just converts into fatigue. Here's the part every anime gets right without explaining it. None of these systems work in isolation. A perfect kinetic chain means nothing if your tactical mind can't read the opening to use it. Perfect prediction means nothing if your nervous system panics under pressure and can't execute what you saw. And none of it matters if you're not sleeping or eating enough to let your body adapt to the training in the first place. Goku's Super Saiyan is the chassis. Daniel's Ultra Instinct is the neurology. Baki's imagined opponent is the tactical mind pushed to its visualization limit. And the training arc every single one of them goes through is the metabolic recovery loop most people skip entirely. You already have all 4 systems. The only thing separating you from fictional power is repetition, applied in the right order. You don't need a destiny. You don't need a bloodline. You need a plan for your chassis, your mind, your nervous system, and your recovery in that order. Pick one pillar you're weakest in right now. Train just that one this week. Drop it in the comments. I read every single one, and I'll tell you exactly where to start. Follow for more breakdowns.